This is too West Coast.
You in my own thing. And if you got a problem with that, then I need to go bang, 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 bang. And I'll be everywhere on the map, but I rep that West. I rep that West. I rep that West. I rep that West. I rep that West.
Come on.
I rep that West. I rep that West. I rep that.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jamie from Fifield Fabrications. We're just going to come at you today with a video about how to put our mini mounting kit into a Chevy Dash bezel. We're going to show you how to do the glass work and what we do to actually mold that into the bezel. So let me show you what we got. What we have is, as you can see, we have the mini mounting kit, and we have a Chevy bezel from a 2002 Suburban, and we are going to basically cut this section out here, and then we're going to show you how to mold this into the actual bezel. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cut this center rib out, because the goal here is we want to be able to keep our AC vent and a little pocket that's here just for functionality. So we're going to try to keep the mini strictly in this area here. The back opening, or the back of the actual kit, the width from here to here looks like it'll fit no problem, and we may just have to cut into the sides here a little bit, but we're gonna cut it out and we'll see how it fits. So we got that rib cut out, and basically what I did is I like to use painter's tape to give me a straight guide or an edge. But what I have to do is I have to widen this on each side to just under 9 inches, which is the basically, if you're looking at the flange on the kit, once you take away the sides of the flange, from here to here is just under 9 inches. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this basically just straight out to here, straight down, and create a nice square opening. And then we're going to cut the flange off of the actual off the sides of the kit to give us a perfect fit inside, and we'll move on to the next part. Now that we got the back to fit in there the way we want, what we're going to do is we're going to trim down the kit, and then we'll work on melting some of the pieces together, and then get into the finishing work. Okay, so what I did is I cut the sides off to get it to actually press and sit flat up against the dash bezel. Now what I'm doing is I want to try to follow this line for where I'm going to try to sink this thing in, so it'll sit flat with the rest of the bezel, at least as flat as possible. So I'm trying to follow this contour here. Then I'm just going to kind of grind the mini M kit down to fit that a little bit better. And once I do, then I'm going to basically cut the dash bezel a little bit more to get this to sit just about flush into the dash bezel before I actually melt the two pieces together and get into the actual glass work and finishing work. Okay, so I cut those away. You can see it's really close to this line. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to modify these a little bit. I'm going to just take my grinder and I'm going to round these down to try to follow that a little bit better. And same thing here. The reason why I want to follow this is when I cut this, it gives me more room inside this little recess here to melt the pieces together and to create a nice smooth transition for the glass. So let's get those cleaned up. Okay, now that we rounded off the kit nice and clean and we have the cut that we want, what I did is I started to lay this in, and we want this to be as flush with the bezel as possible, especially if you're using a connector, because you need clearance just a little bit behind the back of here for the lightning cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just finish trimming on the bottom to get it nice and flush with the edge of this, so that this will sit completely flush with the bezel, and then we can actually get to bonding these two pieces together. Okay, so I made my trace and I got it all cut out to be contoured with the kit. I just got to go back through on the insides here and just kind of clean these up with my grinder just a little bit. The tighter the better. I mean, you want this thing to fit pretty, you want the pieces to butt up to each other as much as possible, so you can get a really strong bond and just have better structural integrity. Okay, so as you can see, I got the kit in there. I got the edge flush where the connector is to give me clearance in the back, and then it's going to be flush on this edge, and then the rest we'll just have to actually mold a little bit and do a little bit of cleanup. But that way, being that it's flush, it'll look nice and flat in the bezel. It'll be square in the bezel. It'll look straight. Some of you are probably wondering, well, why did you cut the inside part first and then go to the outside? Well, the way I figured, I don't like to cut if I don't have to, so if the less cutting the better, and that way it also gives you a nice square fit, and you can get a reference to see that it's nice and square inside whatever you're putting into before you actually decide to do your trace cut and then sink it back in. Okay, so I went ahead and I used my iron and I melted the two pieces together as much as possible where the plastic was meeting. The more that you get melted together, the better, because it creates a little more strength. I do it front and back. Creates a little more strength before you do the glass work, and you're less likely to see cracking and things like that. So you definitely want to try to get that as much as you can. I just use an iron like this, and I will actually just push the two pieces together, push it into each other, and just melt them together. It's not terribly difficult. Just typical soldering iron will work. One other thing that I would recommend doing, that we're doing now, is where the pieces don't really meet up. I'm taking some of the scrap material that was left over from when we cut the dash and cut the kit. You see I got a couple pieces here I'm going to melt in. I also did a larger piece here across the front and melted those all together. And again, this is just to create a little more structural integrity and strength before we lay a little bit of Marglass on this thing and help to prevent from cracking in the future. We don't want to rely on the Marglass holding it together. We just want the Marglass more to kind of finish it off, as well as create a little bit of strength to it. But let's get these other pieces melted in, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we got all the plastic pieces in and melted. As you can see, it's actually melted all the way around. Okay, so it's 100% melted to the bezel. And now what I'm going to do is I'll just take my grinder, and I'm just going to actually shave down some of these high spots. You don't want to dig into it too hard. You just want to kind of flatten some of it out before you actually lay some of the glass on. It'll just cut down some time a little bit for you. All right, now that we got that done, you can see a lot of this is a lot smoother. You just have a little bit of divots and recesses and things like that. But what I'm going to use here, I'm just using this just because it's easy for everyone to get a hold of. It's just Bondo glass. You can get it at any Home Depot. It's a mixture of fiberglass and filler. and I'm going to apply that to the front edge, and I'll apply it pretty liberally to the back side to create a little more strength to it. Don't want to go too crazy with it, you know, for weight reasons, but it'll definitely help to just create a little bit of reinforcement and structure. Okay. So taking the Bondo glass and you know, applying it with a, you know, your putty knife or your squeegee or whatever you want to use, just apply it on there. You can see why I taped some of this stuff off, because once I take the tape off, this stuff will come off with it, and it'll just not make such a big mess. But we're going to let that cure up for a second, then we'll do the back side, and then we'll put a little bit more on just to try to get a little smoother. And then once that cures all up, then we will take the tape off and start sanding down a little bit, and then we'll finish it off with a little bit of lightweight filler. Okay, so we got that to cure up a little bit. We took the tape off, went around it with a razor blade, and just kind of cut off some of the excess. Just try to give me more of a straight edge to work with, so the glass and stuff wouldn't lift off the plastic. Applied some of it to the back as well to create a little more strength. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to apply a little bit more of the Bondo glass on the top here, just to smooth it out a little more, strengthen it, and then what we'll do is we'll feather it up with some lightweight filler. All right, so now that we got that glazed up, we went over here just to fill that gap that was on the dash bezel, so it didn't look inconsistent across on this side. We are now going to start sanding it down and smoothing it out and getting ready to lay some lightweight filler on. Okay, so we actually sanded it down. You can see the dash bezel is now really starting to take shape, and it's getting real close. There's if you look real closely, there's still little pits and stuff like that we just need to go back over and clean up, and we just need to feather it a little bit better. That's what we're going to use some of the lightweight filler for. I just actually used, for this, just to make it faster, I just used like an orbital sander, like a 100 grit disc, just to kind of cut it down. Okay, so I glazed it with a little bit of lightweight filler while I'm waiting for it to cure up and get a little more solid before I sand it. I usually go over all the edges, some of the real high stuff. I usually go back over it with like a razor blade or a putty knife, and that'll help actually again cut your time, and it'll cut down your sanding. So yeah, then once we sand this, we'll squirt a little bit of primer over the top of it, just see where our bad spots are, and we'll fine tune it. Okay, so we shot it with primer after we sanded it down, and as you can see, it's pretty smooth, it's pretty clean. There are a few areas that we are going to work on. Just got to build it up a little bit with a little bit more primer in some spots, and feather it in with a high grit, just nice and slow by hand, and then we should be just about ready for paint. Well, there you have it. We primed it up with another layer of primer. We went over it with a 220, but as you can see, the actual kit is in place, and there's your iPad mini in the dash of a Chevy Silverado. And again, this is using a Fifield Fabrications Mini-M kit. It's the mounting kit for the iPad mini, and we just glassed it into the dash bezel of a Chevy Silverado. But if you have any questions, you can hit us up at our email at fifieldfab@yahoo.com, or just go to our website and order up the actual kit at fifieldfabrications.com. Alright, so here we have the bezel in its finished state of primer, ready for paint. We smoothed the rest of the bezel out and got it all primed and ready to go. From here we'll probably just sand it down with probably a 320 just before we actually shoot it with a base color of some kind, and then we'll clear over that. But this is from start to finish approximately 5 hours of fabrication time, so it's a big time saver. And again, using the Fifield Fabrications Mini M kit, it's very, very helpful. Thanks for watching.